Boom! What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This week's episode of the Championship Corner. I got my homie, Kyana George, the new coach's assistant over at TWU at Texas Women's. Pumped to have you on and chat. But before we even get going, gonna pop off the first question. As always, tell us your wildest, funniest story. It could be something about you, something about a coach. It could be back when you were like 5 years old and like rec league gymnastics. Give me something good.
Okay. So one of my favorite memories is when it's kind of a bad thing because the gym at Cal was leaking everywhere, but the roof kind of was like concaving in and previously that week I turned on the heater and accidentally set the gym on fire. And so they had to go in and do repairs. And so, due to that, they needed to turn off the water during practice, which meant that we couldn't use the restroom. So, me and my other teammate, Grace, had to go outside and use the restroom before floor because me and her are both front tumblers. And so, that was probably the craziest thing, just kind of being like, we'll be right back. We're going to go outside.
Yeah.
The gym and then run back in, and it was just kind of funny because everyone was just like, we know exactly what you guys did and behind the gym, so yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, cool. All right, let's jump in. So, why coaching? How did you get into deciding that you wanted to jump into coaching? And I guess I'm genuinely curious because I think a lot of times as people look for like what's next in their life, especially like former athletes, is that tends to want to be like the easiest, like go to, just natural, almost convenient like solution to being an adult, right? To start adulting in our lives after college. So what was it for you? I guess right now, like wanting to dive back in or to dive into coaching.
um well, actually, I was my sorry. I was actually my old club coach, who's now the assistant coach at Bama, Gina. She reached out to me for a marketing position at Bama, and then she was like, "Oh, like we have camp. We want you to meet the girls." And so I went over there to meet the girls, and then she kind of asked me a little bit, since I was working the camp. That Ashley was kind of like impressed at the fact that I was taking the reins of each event that I was on and just like, okay, we're doing this. And when you have that many 8 to 15-year-olds, I guess it says a lot. And so then they pulled me for an interview and they asked me how I felt about being a volunteer coach. And at this point, I was knew that I wanted to go into behavioral therapy, and working with children with autism, and that was something that we talked about. And I also knew that I previously struggled with gymnastics as just a whole, with my experience in gymnastics, that I kind of wanted to do both. And just the fact that they were able to be like, yes, like you can go and become an RBT and become a volunteer coach. And I think that was a great time for me to learn, I guess, gymnastics in a new way,
Yeah.
um, just due to my injury when I tore my Achilles the year before. So I think that's where my brain was kind of like, oh yeah, I don't really know what I'm gonna do, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So what allows you, like you said, is like where in your personality allows you to, like, what's the right word? Like just dive in, right? I think, obviously like being a TWU, like I've kind of seen, and then and then you just said, like, even when you were at Bama there, just working camp, it was kind of like, just dive in like head first without holding back, without like sticking your toe in the water of like, I don't really know like what, like how far I should go, how much I should say. Like, has that always been your personality? What allows you to just kind of go head first?
um I would say definitely when I was younger, I wasn't like that. I was very quiet, very
No way. No
yeah,
way.
very quiet. didn't really speak that much. I was funny once you got to know me, but I pretty much wanted to stay in the background. And I think a really big turning point to that was when Marnie and Gina, when they came to Metroplex, just kind of working with me and seeing my potential, but then also understanding that, I mean, we're getting split up into groups. Are we going to go in the morning? Or we're going to go in the afternoon? Or are you going to do 2 days? And I think with me, since I was very upfront with what I wanted, that's when they kind of saw my potential to lead, because they asked me, okay, like, how do you want your training program? Because we don't really know you. And I was just like, I want to like train elite, but I don't want to do elite. I just want to be a really strong level 10, because I know I have a lot of fears. So I would rather, when everyone's learning the basics for elites, I would rather like also help me like, perfect my form on a cast handstand, because like
Right.
it'd be just as clean. And so I think that's where they're like, okay, we have this potential in the girl. Me, myself, I didn't necessarily see it. And then I would say they came when I was 10, turning 11, but when I was 12 years old, and Marnie made me lead run for the first time, which means that like you are the leader of like everyone should look to you. You set the tone for every single practice. You set the speed. You set how it's supposed to look, and pretty much your goal is to not have somebody else become the leader. And I think that really pushed me in a way where I was like, I will not let these older girls become the leader. I will not let anyone younger than me become the leader. And I think that stayed all the way through. Even when we had team elections for team captain, and I was very nerve-wracking about it. I was very nervous. And yeah, and then I got that. I think that's when it was my sophomore year when it was our first time doing elections for team captain.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's kind of when I really noticed, like, okay, like, let's go full force. Let's go kind of like crazy in a sense, but that's really where like my competitive drive and like willingness to just jump in really came from.
Yeah. So what about like, okay, let's go deeper. What allows you, like, obviously like coaching, like actual gym, like the actual technical side of thing is easy for you to step into. Why not hesitancy, but why slower on like the full steam, like true connection side of things versus just the coaching? Like why is that one faster than the other one?
Um, just trust, I think, is really important in the sense of like I really like to get to know the gymnast, because I was always coached by people that knew me inside and out. So the fact that I could have a great, amazing day, everything in my life is going the same, and then have the same exact practice. But the fact that I had coaches growing up knowing that something was off, even though it was the same exact practice, that was just something I always appreciated, that I kind of took on, especially with coaching. And I think um, just knowing that I wanted to quit gymnastics a lot of times. I wanted to quit, and I wanted to quit when my sophomore year. And no, I wanted to quit when I was 8. I wanted to quit in 7th grade, right before getting recruited. Then I wanted to quit my sophomore year in high school, because it was my first time being in public school. And you're starting to miss out on homecoming and dances and hanging out with friends. And so that was a really big change for me. And then I wanted to quit after my freshman year in college. And I mean, it was just a lot of things. And I think just the fact that I found my love for the sport in different ways multiple times is why I really enjoy the coaching aspect of it and wanting to get to know the girls, because sometimes when you're younger, you enjoyed the flipping and all of this. And then when you get to college, then you're like, wait, I actually just enjoy the competitiveness, because our
Right.
body is so bad. And I think that's just something why I'm like, I want to know the person and how they think, because I never enjoyed the flipping aspect of gymnastics. I only enjoyed really the competitiveness and technicality of things, or my little phrase, my hashtag find the loopholes
Yeah.
in the sport. that that's what made gymnastics fun for me.
So what, like for you, what is like like when as you're building trust, as you're gaining connection, like what does that look like for you? Like how do you start to earn that? How do you put yourself out there? Um to allow others the freedom to kind of just like flock to you almost, right? Like you're not chasing them down, like, oh, like please, like let's be connected, like trust me, trust me, trust me. Because obviously, like that doesn't work. Like, what's kind of like your method to the madness, I guess?
I think just being open with anything that they're struggling with. I think something is when sometimes people have fears and I'm like, oh yeah, that was me. And they're like, huh? I was like, oh no, like even through my whole entire years in club, like I never did a series like on high beam, like all day, every day. It was like 8 on the low beam, hit 2 on the high beam, or it was okay, only get like 2 dismounts and then just only timers because I think just as like my club coaches, they just really understood that I just had this great amount of fear, but they always knew that I was willing to push through it or find another way to win. And I think that's also where I'm like, no, I relate to you. I completely understand because I think that's something that a lot of gymnasts, when sometimes you do get coaches that are all like, oh, they have fears, they're never going to go anywhere, or like, oh, they're like not willing to listen, or oh, they don't enjoy like the sport and all of this. And I'm like, no, like they do. It's just they just don't know how to do it in like a different way. And I think since I was that different way person, um, that's where I'm all like, no, there's always another way. Like, if you're scared to do this, we can do something else. If you're doing this, you can do something else. And then going to college, just kind of talking about like freshman year was hard for me, super hard for me. Just kind of not understanding the reins, having loved my parents to death, but I definitely was in my little bubble.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially coming from Texas to California, it was a completely different experience in itself. And then throughout my years, I mean, my junior, sophomore, going into my junior year, just kind of had a lot of anxiety and depression and just truly wasn't like mentally well or happy. And then just kind of breaking through that and like becoming more vulnerable with my teammates and trusting them is just something that, and trusting my coaches, just completely opening up to my coaches about everything.
Yeah.
um and I think that's where I'm like, I feel like people sense that, just because I feel like I am an open book, or even if they just ask a question, I will just tell them everything. And I think that's something that's shown. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you went out to, was the biggest transition from Texas to California, was it like culture, like the culture
Yeah.
of the country?
Yeah. It
what,
was,
or I was gonna ask, yeah, like what was the biggest like shock, eye-opening piece? Because I like definitely can relate to that. Like when I went from Alabama to West Virginia, I was like, holy fuck, like these people are crazy. Like everybody's blunt in your face. Like I come
yeah.
from like, they're like, why are you holding the doors for people? And why do you say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir? Like, lose that shit.
Yeah. Um, that was definitely a big part of it. Like, everything's just really fast paced in California, especially Bay Area being so close to San Francisco. And um I think fast pacedness of everything. Like, I feel like in Texas, they're like, "Oh, you're struggling. Like, come on, we're all gonna go together." It's all like, "Listen, like, that's up to you." Sorry. So I was very much like, "Okay, like, I can't catch up." like,
Yeah.
and then I just think, especially in Texas or just in the South, like just presence of needing to be, hair done, nails done, makeup done, like presentation. And I mean, I just remember like my first week there, I was going to practice at 8 a.m. with like eyeliner, glitter eyeshadow, like everything was put together. And everyone's like, why are you waking up at 6 for an 8? And I was just like, well, I'm like, this is what I did even on Saturdays in club. Like, I always had my like makeup done, at least mascara, if like I wasn't feeling well, or ended up waking up late, but like everything was always done.
Yeah.
um and so I think that was something that was a transition. And I think it was a nice rub off on the team and me. Like, I learned to just kind of like let my guard down and relax and just kind of being comfortable in my own skin. But then also I feel like I taught like this whole entire like demeanor of like, oh, like she's the it girl. Like, so like the attitude of that kind of like went into like the Cal team, like the more and more um I mean, we became closer and I was able to be a junior and a senior and kind of like speaking a little bit more. But yeah, I think that was a collaboration of both, but yeah.
So what was for you, I'll give an example. Like for me, like what was your biggest, I don't know, like personal takeaway from being able to go out to California, experience something like completely different? Because I always encourage people too, is when I was in Texas, especially, is just like people would be looking at universities like in this radius of like here's home and like I don't go outside like this radius. I'm like, dude, I know it's gonna suck, but like I promise, like you will be so much better off like 3, 4, 5 years from now of like going and just like getting a different perspective on the world and just understand like, whether you agree with it, like it, dislike it, like it
Yeah.
really doesn't matter. And so for me, is like I think like when I went to WVU, is like that was probably like the hardest part, one of, if not the hardest like times in my own life. But looking back on it, is like I needed to develop like that thick skin. Like I needed that. I needed to go somewhere and be in a culture, be around people that were just like really, really, really blunt and just told you how it was. And so I think that was like one of the things like I like really took away. And so like like now it's like everybody's like, oh my God, like you're so blunt. Like I was not like that like at all. Like that was a learned like part of my personality. So for you, like looking back on it, like what was the big takeaway, so to speak, for you personally, like going in a different part of the world?
Um, the opposite. I learned how to not be so blunt. I think just because I was a very blunt person in club, when people would just kind of be like, oh, like this assignment's hard or whatnot. And like my first reaction would usually be like, well, it wouldn't be hard if you just tried harder in conditioning. Like if you actually put in the
Yeah.
effort, like it wouldn't be that difficult. Or if just anything, I'd be like, well, if you were willing to do this, then like you would get this. So I was very blunt. And then I kind of had to learn in California, like, a completely different side of it, because I was like that kind of in the gym, but then I kind of had to learn like, oh, okay, there's a little bit more to life than just like gymnastics. And
Right.
it's so I think I learned to just kind of like embrace everything and kind of learn like gymnastics is something that I like to do. And like I said, relearning how to like love the sport rather than being like I am the sport. And
Mm-hmm.
um so then that's when I kind of learned how to just be like, or asking for help and just being unblunt and like open and being like, oh, sorry. Like the only reason I come off very strong and hard is just because I kind of had to be. Of Yeah.
Yeah. So are you a homebody? Is that what brought you back home?
Yes, I'm definitely a homebody. I would say what brought me back home was just, I mean, just being away for 6 years and knowing that yes, my mind has changed a lot within like what I want to do and where do I want to go, but I think it really was like where can I see myself staying, like creating a family and growing, and that was just Texas for me, especially when it was kind of finding a coaching position. I was like, I don't want to be that person that kind of moves from university to university and then like finally finds their place and stays. I'm like, no, I want to grow with the university. I want to grow with the team and create a legacy and just kind of be there for everything. And I think that was something that I just knew I've always wanted to like come back home to Texas. And so I was like, you know what? If it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm just going to move back home to Texas. And then I got the call.
So were you in school when you were at Bama too?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so what's drawn you into like behavioral therapy?
Um, so
Because when
in
you went there, it was about marketing, right? That's what you said
yeah,
earlier. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So were you interested in marketing at the time? Oh, hot
yeah,
damn. Are you just all over the place?
yeah. Well, so at Cal, when the marketing aspect of the things that I really enjoyed was at Cal, I was kind of honestly, I was just sick and tired of the fact that as like we were just getting better and better, yet I was still walking to classes and students were all like, oh, I didn't know we had a gymnastics team. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know. we're ranked second in the Pac-12 this year. What do you mean you don't know? So it was just kind of one of those things that I was like, okay, you know what? Marketing. What can I do for marketing? And so that's when I wanted to join sports marketing.
Mm.
Other teammate also joined, and just literally learning the ropes, like learning how much money that we were getting in marketing, learning, okay, well, what can I get for basketball that we can also bring in because we play in the same arena. So we might as well use what they have. And then kind of like working the football games and being like, okay, what do I like that, what can I see that the fans are enjoying from the football games? What can I see that they're not enjoying from the football games? What's being used? Am I bored working at this like kids play area, or am I having fun in this other play kids area that we have? Is it the people that are working it, or is it the actual like thing that's being set up? And I think um that kind of just helped me have like an aspect of wanting to learn how to market our team better and learn
Yeah.
to make sure that like people in our university did know, people in San Francisco did know. And yeah.
So
So
was
that's
it
what
successful?
it was. Yeah. I was like, now Cal has like, we have banners like all
So
over
what
the
were some of the things that like you were like uncovering that like they weren't like taking advantage of that like basketball was in the arena that like gymnastics necessarily wasn't? Like what were some of those things?
um I think just getting the word out and doing promotions and then like using social media, but like us as a team, we're very much kind of like, oh, okay, like Cal Gymnastics, like woo, rather than like one year. Like I think it was in the middle of my freshman year, and I just remember like all of us freshmen like just asked Justin for a big box of posters, and like we were just like, okay, we're gonna go all over the dorms and just like put them on top of everyone's.
Make it rain.
Yeah, we were just like taping it, and like all some of our like friends that we ran into were like, what are you guys doing? We're like, gymnastics season, we need like everyone there. And I think that just helped so much. And then also just handing out like tickets, like just free tickets, because students got them free, so it was
Yeah.
easier to understand like it's a free ticket whether you have the ticket or not. But just kind of like handing it out like, here you go, like they're like, come, why wouldn't you want to come? And I think just getting more involved with the crowd rather than it used to kind of just be like, okay, like come and watch us, like go Bears, rather than like now it's very much like as Beam's warming up, the other half of the team that's usually cheering on Beam is actually now like turning around and like doing chants with like the crowd to get it.
Mm.
As I mean, on Beam, we're kind of like lights out blinders. Like some of us just really can't even hear our teammates. So those teammates might as well just like get into the crowd. And that was just something that I enjoyed so much that even the parents got into it, whether it came to like decorating and getting louder and like going full force ahead. And like this is when we were all like, you know what, we're getting a bear head, we're getting blue sunglasses, like let's just have fun. And like one of my favorite sayings is, the team that has the most fun has the most fun. And it's really hard to explain because it makes no sense, but it's just a saying that Justin says. And like it's a really long story, but it's just something that I think like they've embraced as a culture. And that's just something that like I'm like, no matter what, like let's just go out and have fun. Like if we're gonna go hard and go crazy, let's not be serious about it, let's just go for it. Like
Yeah.
the way you're gonna like win. So yeah.
So did that help you a lot like personally? Like was that at a time like in your career like when you're in that like struggle bus like do I want to be here? Do I not want to be here? And so was that element like I don't know, did it give you some freedom to just go do versus stress, worry, anxiety like I hate this place. Ugh.
Yeah, it definitely did. I think it was also just because, like, as a gymnast, since I was very much like, I need to know this person's all around, I need to know this, and I need to know this. Going into college, I didn't know anything. My first meet out, I got freshman of the week, but then I was like, I don't even know what freshman of the week is. And so
Right.
then started learning about it. Like, that definitely, like, kind of ruined the way, like, my brain was working, because I did start to like panic and be like, oh well, I have to hit, like they haven't done this and I need to like be the person that does it. And then just kind of like releasing and being like, listen, like you just have to do you, like you didn't even know about the award and you got it, so like don't worry about the award, and like,
Right.
let's see just like what happens. And I think that's where like my other awards that I achieved and gotten throughout the years, um, it just came from me just being me. And I think that's just like something that I just really enjoyed. So yeah.
So going back, okay, to the marketing and
Yeah,
behavioral
that
therapy, yeah, full circle. So when you left there, the idea was to jump into marketing in some sports marketing, I'm assuming, in some form or fashion. And then that's when you linked up with Gina and she was like, hey, like, let's talk some marketing. And then you get like, when you got there, you ended up going to coaching. So did you do any marketing ish, like while you were at Bama, or did that just kind of like get put on hold for a hot minute, like while you were coaching?
Um, it was semi on hold. Sometimes like if there was an idea or something that I knew, or even when it came to like the ESPN shoots and stuff, like I think that's when they kind of were like, okay, like let's kind of see where like Kai's thinking, or like even at the end of the year, we're all like, okay, so what should our theme for next year be? And just getting my insight on that was something that I really appreciated.
Right.
I full force go into the marketing, but I think it was nice also for them, having a younger person kind of that understands like social media, what's trending, what's not trending.
You can
Just kind
say it. You're hip. It's all right.
of,
You're a hipster.
but just kind of saying that, and using me for that was something that they did. But I didn't always wanted to go into sports marketing, because actually after, well, I did child welfare within like my 5th year at Cal, and I was already planning to move back home to get into behavioral therapy. Gina just actually happened to ask and like realize like, oh, like she's been in sports marketing. Like, what does she think about marketing?
Okay, so when you left, the whole behavioral therapy, that was like at the forefront of your brain.
Yes, it's been at the forefront of my brain since I was in high school. I did this program called PALS where we each got 2 students. One student was at the high school that was going into like in special needs, and
Hmm.
then also got a kid from an elementary school, and so we helped out with the Special Olympics and hosted games, and um, all of that. It just made my heart pure. Like I could wake up in the morning and have like the worst day of my life, but I always knew I would be happy and grateful the minute I like stepped into the room. I could have like, even when I was at Bama, like I'd be like, oh, it's so early, it's 6 a.m. Because they practice in the afternoon, so I would work in the morning, and I'd be like, I don't feel like getting up, but then I would get out, like the minute I would see my kid, like whole demeanor would just change, because I was like, my little pure and joy. And like just the fact that if I even like got my clients just to either say hello or bye or give me a high five, just like the small little moments, just filled my whole entire heart with joy. And
So where does that side of you come from?
um it's a really good
Yeah,
question.
right. Like
Yeah,
not the like in your face, let's effing win, let's go do this shit, like versus like,
yeah.
oh my God, just so much joy in life. And
Yeah, I would have to say it comes from my aunt. We like to say that she raised me, but she was pretty much my babysitter my whole entire life. She moved in with me and my family when I was 4, and she was 17, and so I went everywhere with her. She took me to school, would work at my school. She also worked at my club gym when I was younger, and I was just attached to her by the hip. And she was, since I feel like since she was so young, it was very much like a home free, like let's just like live life. And I think that's where I kind of was always like, okay, like let's just live life. And then, you know, she also got paid for babysitting like my friends, and so those friends become childhood sisters. And I mean, everyone just calls my aunt Auntie. Like a lot of people don't know her real name.
yeah, yeah.
Goes by Auntie. She'll introduce herself as Auntie. And um, yeah, I think it really came from her, just her growing up, and then me just being attached to her by her hip, and her trying to find herself. So I was able to just kind of like be myself. So yeah.
So was that like was that like your idol? Was that like your hero? Like at the time when you're, where were you? You said you're like 4 or 5
Yeah.
when she, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's crazy. All right. So it's like, all right, like the puzzle comes together a little bit. So it's like you had this hero, you had this idol who was young, right? Like 17, 18 years old, like that basically like took you by the hand and like guided you. And so it's like now it's like you just want to be your own guiding light.
Yeah. And I
So
think that
is there a certain age that you like what,
um I really
like
like
kids?
yeah. I would say I really like working with the kids that are from like 2 to 5 or 2 to 6. I think that's just an age where I feel like the labels kind of start. We're like, oh, like that kid is like
Um,
Blend or this kid, and I think that's kind of where you're like, well, you just never know. Or like sometimes 2 is literally the determining factor of like, will this kid be labeled as like a troublemaker, or will this kid be like the non-problem child? Um, so yeah, I think that's why I like to be in that realm, because I mean, an only child versus a kid that knows how to like work or function with multiple children because they have multiple siblings is going to interact different in a classroom than a kid that is an only child and doesn't have anyone really to interact with. And so I think that's where I really like that age range because of that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, because I'm always curious of, I guess people like go on like their own journey of like doing what they're doing and making a difference, making an impact like in the world. Is I'm always curious, is it driven by pain or pleasure, right? Like I would say that like a lot of mine in being able to like empower, guide like athletes, especially at the college level, is because like my experience was so painful, not because of anybody or anything. It was just like I was at a time I was very lost, right? And so it's like I never want people to experience that pain that I went through versus it sounds like a lot of yours is driven like by pleasure in the sense of like I had this really great experience. I had this auntie that literally like took me under her wing, right? Like, and guided me for how long until when? Or still.
Oh, still attached by the hip. Now my little cousin comes over to my house and I bug her all the time. She's definitely my little sister. I mean, she even did like gymnastics classes at Metroplex, but like I'm with my aunt still. Probably like every day. I'm always stopping by their house because she only lives 10 minutes away from TWU. So I'm always all like, okay, I'm gonna stop by. And like sometimes they're all like, what are you even doing here? I'm like, I'm with
You're grown. Go
yeah.
home.
So, yeah, still there, still super close. Yeah, definitely pleasures where I would say like my behavioral side came from, and then my coaching definitely came from probably like my pain side of just kind of, well, pain and pleasure, I guess, at the same. Just kind of being told when I was younger in the gymnastics world, you know, you're not going to be good enough, you're not smart enough, just things like that. But then having coaches being like, no, we see your potential and we're willing to get you to wherever you want to go. I think that's where I'm all like, oh no, like if you say you want to do something, we're gonna do it. We don't have to do it the normal way. We're just gonna
Right.
do it. So
Well, it
yeah.
goes in, it's like people, I always say it's like people obsess over the how, right? Like, how am I
Yeah.
going to get from point A to point B? It's like they say, I just use an extreme example. It's like, hey, like, I want to be a national champion. And then, like, immediately their brain's like, okay, like, then we got to do this, and we got to do this, and we got to, and they like try to put the puzzle together. It's like before the whole damn thing started, I'm like, dude, you're going to be on like plan you by the time that like you even get halfway down there. And so it's funny that like I think somebody once told me it's like the moment you start to like map it out, it's like go ahead and write it in pencil because like you're gonna erase it and like you're gonna continue to develop and design it like along the way. So it's kind of the old like I always say it's like the less that you care, the better outcomes that you get. It's like don't freak out like about like that's why it's like I don't know. Let me get your take on this. Like I'm very hesitant of like using the whole phrase because I think it's super cliche, like in the sports world of like the whole like trust the process. I'm like,
Mhm.
kinda, right? Because like your process, while there might be like 3 or 4 like core elements to it, but like how you're going to go about that is going to be way different, most likely. I don't know. What's your take?
Yeah, I see trust the process as I think that's because like our coaches at Cal always said like trust the process, but I also think it was more of a they kind of gave us like, but this is at this point we're testing this, at this point we're testing this,
Mm-hmm.
at this point we're testing this. Trust our process as in you need to know how to do this by this certain point. You need to know how to do this by a certain
Mm.
point. I think they definitely trusted us as we know our own bodies. We know what we need to do. Um, where they kind of understood that part or like let us take free reins in a sense of like how we would get there. So like, if someone needs extra numbers on this, like they'll get their extra numbers in, but they'll
Yeah.
trust the fact that I'm like, I think I only need two. And they're all like, and we agree. Like, because we know that you're going to be there when we test that. And so I think that was something that they also let us, again, like key elements, like they knew trust the process meant trust each section that we're giving you. But we also understand that it will look like a completely different process.
All right. 100% vibe with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Like there's 3 or 4, like, there's a framework of like 3 or 4 elements of like, okay, we got to go from here to here to here, but how we're going to get from A to B may be different amongst like
Yeah.
team to team or individual to individual. Yeah. I vibe
Yeah.
with that. I totally get that. Yeah. 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 Interesting.
Yeah. I think that was probably like why my coaching is also the same way. Like at Cal, just Liz really took a kind of my freshman year, she was all like, okay, I'm coaching everyone the same. And then she gets me and she's just kind of like, okay, this one I got to coach differently, but I don't know how I'm going to coach her differently. And I just remember her like going to my club coaches and kind of being like, well, how do you coach her? Like, she's like, she doesn't function like, like a robot in a sense. And so then they were kind of like, oh no, you kind of have to like tell it to her in a different way or make it a game or make it something that she understands. And so I remember we were like doing beam routines and other people, she was like, hey, you need to straighten your back leg, you need to do this. And she's like, and Kai, that beam routine was great, but it was kind of like you put on a full face of foundation and like completely forgot your setting spray. And I was like, oh my God. that's that's scary. Like I'm like, I was like, then that means everything like would melt away, like because I forgot to set my setting spray. Like, so I her kind of like learning how to speak to me in that way and kind of learning like I'm more of a technical than a wanting to look a certain way. I'm just like, okay, well, how can I do this way? And or, being like our team was on point, like so on point, you kind of forgot your bottom lashes, but it was still great.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, okay. So that's probably like a 995 if I only forgot like my bottom lashes on accident. Like, so I think that was just something that's why I'm like able to coach in a different aspect because I feel like coaches had to coach me in a different way. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So was your, I'm assuming that your school, because you're in school now too, right? So your schooling like from Bama to TWU is the same.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm currently getting my master's in public health at Berkeley, and they're just so hands on, wanting to make sure that I'm getting what I want and still wanting to achieve what I want. Just kind of being like, okay, let's set out a plan. I mean, it was supposed to be 2.5, yeah, 2.5, but
But
not a year. Only to understand that I was like, listen, I'm coaching, but I want to put all my effort into my schooling as well. Like, I want to be able to come up with a plan where like I can do this. And so I had like my internship and like no classes so that I could coach in the summer and travel and still do my internships. And then now I'm just doing classes and coaching. And I think just as a whole, everyone was just on board with understanding that this was just something that I wanted to do, whether it be Ashley, taking me in and making sure that like I was still getting good grades to even Lisa and everyone at TWU being like, okay, we know that she's doing schooling during the times like we have a meeting, lecture notes, practice, then she has like live lectures. Like they understand that and work with me with that. And I think that's just absolutely amazing.
yeah. 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 So when do you like, when's the time to dive? full into, I guess, like the behavioral therapy side of it?
Well,
Like when
I
you got to go start making some money.
yeah, and I think that's where I'm kind of that was like my big thing. And I remember talking to Justin Springs about it. Was like I was like, I don't know where to go. I find like I have love for this sport,
Yeah.
but I've for like this job, like I've had it for so long. And then I just remember sitting down with him and he was just kind of like, well, do you have passion for helping others? Because I feel like you're very open with the fact that, gymnastics was never something you truly loved, but you had a passion for it in a different way. And then like just being there for your teammates and coaching, like we can see your passion. It's not necessarily a love, but it's like you're just drawn to it. Like you have to be there to help them and push them and be there for those girls the same way you want to be there for those kids. And so I think that's something where I'm kind of like, that's why I was like, okay, well, you know what, I'm just gonna move back home and whatever happens happens. Like I just like
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm just gonna sit here and wait. And again, I mean, how you say you got to be a little delusionally confident. I was a little delulu thinking I was like, you know what, I'm gonna reach out, whether it be behavioral therapy or coaching. I'm just gonna sit here and hope. So, but it happened though. People heard I was moving back to Texas, and it happened. But um, I completely just went off guard, didn't I? But
I follow you. It's just like you're trying to, so a part of you is still open-minded about like actual
yeah,
coaching. Yeah.
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 So, and I think that's what it is that I'm like, if I go into coaching, I just know, and I think that's kind of where I'm like,
We
once
have to
I,
be like the perfect spot, is what it sounds
yeah,
like. Like it's
yeah,
not like, yeah, like you said earlier, it's like at the beginning, I'm still like I wasn't gonna just go coach to coach then. And so it's like it's probably narrowed down even more so now
yeah,
of like here's like two, three, four jobs like that I would even like entertain type thing.
100%. So I think that's just kind of where it's at at the moment. But um, I think with me, I know I can always go back to behavioral therapy. And if I were to go into behavioral therapy, I know I can always go back into coaching because I'm going to always have experience and love and passion, understanding for both sides. So I think that's where I'm just kind of like, wherever life takes me, like if I don't happen to coach next year and go into behavioral therapy and I stay in that for 10 years and I'm like, you know what? Like love these kids, but like I want to go back into coaching. This is what I want to do. Then I'll go back into coaching. So
Yeah. 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 So when do you finish up with like when can you like I don't know, do you have to get like a certification or like something like that to like, or is it just once you graduate, then like you can just go ahead and like go find like a job in behavioral therapy or like how, like what's the structure on that?
so I already had my RBT certification, which is registered behavioral technician. And that so I already have that. So then I would just have to retest for it since I haven't done it in a year. And
Okay.
then you can go on and become like a BCBA. And that one is pretty much like my supervisor to like an RBT. And you just kind of keep building and building and building until you can open like your own office or your own place. But yeah,
So would you want to have your own thing? Would you want to be an entrepreneur?
and yeah, I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want
No.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of why I feel like I'm like, whatever happens, happens. Cause I always know there's going to be someone that's going to want to hire. Like,
It always works out. It always
yeah.
works out.
And I think that's probably another reason why I'm like not so stressed. Cause I'm not like, oh, I want to be like the best coach ever and be a head coach somewhere and make a lot of money. Or I don't want to be like, oh, well, I need to start my business and like get all of this so then I can have my own um behavioral therapy like office. I'm like, I just want to help people. So, and I'm like, I just want to make a really big impact and help people in that way. And I think that's sometimes a little confusing, but overall, I know I'm always just satisfied with myself because I always know that I'm doing something right and something that I want. So, yeah.
So have you always been able to like make decisions for yourself?
Yeah. I,
Pretty solid foundation in that.
yeah. And I think at first, definitely not. Definitely not. It was actually my senior year in high school when my club coaches, before I left for college, sat me down. We're all like, you need to stop being a people pleaser. You need to go for what you want. And like, because when they got me, they knew I was a people pleaser. Like, don't step in anyone's way, just do that. And they knew probably most likely in a new environment, I'm gonna retreat back to
Right. Yeah, 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 for sure.
10-year-old Kai. And they're all like, we didn't do all this work for nothing. So they're all like, don't be a people pleaser, make a legacy, just don't be a name on a roster, like set out and do it. Like we know that you can do. And I think that's always stuck with me. So when I went to Cal and I just wasn't a people pleaser. I wasn't gonna have it. Like I was just kind of like, hey, I'm here to win. This is what we're gonna do. Let's do it. And yeah.
Yeah. So is there like a like not a dream job, but like a dream spot, or is it just in Texas? Is that just homebody, or is there like I want to be in the mountains of Montana?
No, I would say just Texas. I mean North Texas. Just since I'm very family oriented, I just know that I would want to be with my family and
Let's be real, you're family oriented because you're an only child. Like, come on, spoiled rotten diva.
uh, it's definitely because of that. But yeah, I think going back to like my aunt growing up with us, just knowing that like my family took her in and then she took me in, and so just all of that combined, plus everyone of one of my like family is in Texas, whether it
Yeah.
be all the way down to the south in Del Rio, Texas, um, all the way up here in North Texas, just all over the place, San Antonio, El Paso, everywhere. So I always know I have family anywhere in Texas. If I ended up living somewhere else in Texas, there will always be some family member there.
Do you have a big family?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
really
you're one of those. It's like we're going to a family reunion. There's gonna be like 300 people there. Like, holy
no,
hell.
100%.
Yeah, it's like a whole like that's an ordeal. Like I've had friends like that because it's not like I don't come from that. Like, yeah, we're like meeting up with the family. I was like, oh, okay, because when we would, I mean, we're talking like I don't know, like 30 people tops, 40 people maybe tops. I was like, like why do you have to get what like why is it such a big ordeal? Like, dude, there's gonna be like 300 people there. I'm like, holy shit, like it's
Oh yeah,
literally an army.
I would say Thanksgiving this usually as families we kind of spend Thanksgiving separately, but this year the whole fam's going to Arizona, so
Oh,
it's
you're going
gonna.
to Arizona.
I would say we're having a family reunion in Arizona, so let's see how it
Like,
works.
what spurred Arizona?
So that's where my I'm pretty sure this is where my grandpa's brother lives,
You don't even
and
know half of them, do you? You like meet new people every time.
pretty much. And um but like and my grandpa passed away, but like he pretty much raised like my mom in Arizona and my uncle and all the other kids in Arizona, and then they moved down to South Texas. And then that's where my aunt was born and everyone else was like pretty much raised. Um but yeah, we're going back to the roots where my grandpa started the whole
Mm,
entire thing, and just yeah, going back to the
damn.
everyone's coming. So
Yeah, that's crazy. Crazy, crazy. All right, last question. So I always ask is if you were in a stadium full of 100,000 people and you could only give like one core message, like one theme, it could be a saying, it could just be something that like you live by, but like the core message, the central theme, like for you, what would you tell them?
ooh, you know, it's always a really questionable motto, but I really do live life by this.
Fair.
Is like give 110% into everything that you do, and you're guaranteed a win no matter like what, like through effort, like it's everything, like because you know that you're gonna get there one way or another. And if you die trying, a win is a win because at least like you left something behind. Like you weren't, like you just weren't there. Like I know if I were to like pass away tomorrow, I left an impact and a mark on every single person that I have met. And so I think that's probably also why I'm always going in 110%. I just always want to be impactful and like give everything to everyone. I mean, um, another reason why it was super important for me to like compete and do floor in Dickey's Arena my senior year was because I remember watching Nina, who was a Denver gymnast, and she did her floor routine, and I swear she was looking at me. I swear she was looking at me, and I was on the top of the top of the arena, and I just knew like that was the moment I was just like, no, I will be here at nationals competing at floor. I will be that gymnast that impacts that little kid to push herself harder and harder every day. And so that is why I live
Love
by.
it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, well, awesome, man. I appreciate you jumping on, shooting shit with me. As I know that everybody, she texts me like when she committed to doing this, and she's like, "I love how I just committed to a podcast and I have no idea what we're talking about." I said, "Me neither.
Yeah.
We'll just, we'll just get on, shoot the shit." So appreciate it, dude. As always, my goal for everybody is just take one thing away, right? It's like reading a book. Anything else is just find your one little nugget, and hopefully like you can implement that, or just be inspired by something. Or I genuinely feel like stories are what move people. It's why like I think we are inspired by movies and books and things like that, because we find people's stories inspiring. So that's why I just enjoy these conversations. So as always, love you guys. Talk with you soon. Peace.